Welcome, everyone, to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Carlos Alcaraz, the rise continues, and he is a Masters 1000 champion at Miami 2022. He beats Casper Ruud in the final in straight sets, and I'm here to break it down. Lots of good stuff. Alcaraz, if a weakness has been pointed to, it has been the first serve. And the fact that sometimes things are difficult on him because he doesn't get a lot of help out of that serve, that he doesn't win a lot of quick, easy, short points using the serve. Well, in this match, that was not a problem. I'm going to talk about why. Casper Ruud made a lot of adjustments. Ruud had, I think, a good idea of what he needed to do in this match. Didn't work, especially on the forehand side. We're going to get into why. I have some general thoughts on Casper and his development. Congratulations to him. Biggest final of his career, his first Masters 1000 final, and it comes on a hard court. We obviously know that so much of the success that he's had in his career has come on clay. Ruud's got a good trajectory right now, a lot of good things happening for him, and I'm going to talk about what I've seen with Ruud in general. But I want to start, before I get into the technical breakdown of the match, with what we're seeing out of Carlos Alcaraz from a macro perspective. People are really excited right now, and I love it. I think it's incredible. We're not at a point where Alcaraz has really even had time to be marketed. I don't think people really know his story. I know I have a lot to learn about his story. People have a lot to learn about his personality. Obviously, seems like an exceedingly nice kid. He's almost kind of a cute interview, and I don't really know if he comes across a little bit differently in Spanish than he does in English. But all this to say, plain and simple, his tennis is doing all the talking. And it's doing a lot of talking because if the crowd noise in Miami at Indian Wells are any indication, this guy is resonating with people. The ability that he has on the court slaps you in the face. It is not subtle. And I think more than anything, Carlos Alcaraz has become the center of attention, at least at a tournament like Miami, where Federer and Nadal and Djokovic were not in the mix, when even Medvedev and Tsitsipas and Zverev did not make the weekend. No semifinals for them in the Sunshine Double as a whole. Carlos Alcaraz felt like the show on the men's side for a lot of this tournament. A lot of the best matches, a lot of the most exciting moments. He's there for the final. And Carlos is the kind of guy who, right now, he's carrying matches on his own. That is very, very rare. People are entertained by Carlos Alcaraz winning in sometimes an uncompetitive way. Now, the final was not a blowout by any means. It was a close match. Ruud could have won the first set, had a lead in the first set. But still, it's like the bottom line, people are enjoying this guy. I think it's great for the game right now. And it's really adding a lot of interest as we head into clay court season. What's just happened, though, is that a guy who has never made it past round 3 of a major just won Miami, and nobody was surprised. The world number 16, now he's up to 11, just won Miami, and nobody was surprised in the slightest. What does that tell you? It tells you that everybody in tennis just used their eyes and knew exactly how to adjust their expectations accordingly. Not to say that anybody knew he was going to win the tournament. And I'm kind of hurting. I was between him and Felix in that quarter, and I went with Felix. Bummer for me on my preview there. But everybody knew and expected him to contend for the title. Not by anything that he's really accomplished. I mean, yes, you have the age, 18 years old, so his trajectory is obviously eye-popping and extremely noteworthy and special. But the only reason nobody was surprised by Carlos Alcaraz winning Miami is because everybody's watching him play. And as I said, it slaps you in the face. Nadal went into the 2005 French Open as the favorite, the betting favorite, having never played the tournament before. Right now, Alcaraz is the third favorite in the betting market. That's probably the closest thing in any I hesitate to call it recent history, but that's probably the closest thing that we've seen to this when it comes to hype for a young player, when it comes to people just seeing someone play and being like, oh yeah, that's it. Because again, should have been on paper, that's a surprise. Nobody was surprised. Everybody expected that he would contend for this Miami title. And look, some people are weary of hype. There's an allergic reaction to hype in tennis because sometimes it's misplaced. Sometimes it's bad. He should be weary of the hype. I'm not sure we should. The hype is fun, and so far, the hype is justified. So, to me, there's no problem here with how Carlos Alcaraz is being covered. The only thing that is sometimes tiresome, but it'll work itself out, is relentless trying to put him in a box. A box that says, that's labeled Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic. Alcaraz is going to end up just being Alcaraz. Now, I have no issue comparing his accomplishments to Nadal because right now that's the only marker for his accomplishments is what Nadal did. Obviously, you had that funny coincidence where Nadal's first ever Masters 1000 final was Miami, and then Carlos does the same thing. I have no problem, and if you watch the preview, I've done this. I have no problem with pointing out those parallels and pointing out, when Alcaraz is the youngest since Nadal or something like that. That's fine. But when it comes to play style, he's really his own thing. And, comparisons can sometimes be really helpful, but then also sometimes they can kind of minimize how special he can be on his own. So that's my thoughts on Alcaraz in general. Want to get into this match analysis after a quick shout out to PlayYourCourt. PlayYourCourt is the place to go if you're looking for a local coach, practice partner, or match. We're getting to summer, right? Weather's getting nice regardless of where you are. Oh, where I'm at these days in Southern California, weather's usually nice, but I'm not bragging. Anyway, get out there. 50% off to join your PlayYourCourt community using the link in the description, playyourcourt.com/Gill Gross. That's 50% off to join the PlayYourCourt community. So the difference in this match, if you look at the point length breakdown, was the 0 through 4 shot rallies. Rallies 5+ were 30-28 Alcaraz. That's a negligible advantage. It's not really where the match was won. The match was won in 0 through 4, and Alcaraz won those shorter points 46-37. There's the separation. So I want to start by focusing on Alcaraz's serve strategy. It was a perfect strategy. A great job by Carlos and his coaches, really orchestrating and executing exactly what he needed to do on serve to dominate those short rallies behind his own delivery. Alcaraz, let me just give you the numbers up front. 35 points won to 6 points lost in the short rallies on his serve. 35-6. Ruud was 31-11. So just not as efficient. A good amount less efficient and a little bit less, actually the same frequency of short points pretty much. But Alcaraz was better in that category. And there's your difference in the match. So let me get to why. So let's start with how Ruud was returning, and I have graphics here to highlight this. So here are Ruud's return hit points. On the deuce side, Ruud was on top of the baseline. He was standing in. On the ad side, he was in sometimes, but then he was back sometimes on the first serve. And I'm focused on first serves right now. On the deuce side, when he was standing in, that would be primarily block return. He would not be driving those returns. On the ad side, he'd stand back and he would drive. So here's what Alcaraz did to counter. So here's on the deuce side. Remember, Ruud standing in on the deuce side. And Alcaraz is mixing it up a fair amount. But if you can kind of look at where his balls are landing, pretty central, pretty safe serving by Carlos. Middle of the box a lot of the time. Not necessarily body serves, but lots of margin. And that is what Carlos is most comfortable with. If Alcaraz tries to hit close to the lines on first serve, his percentage gets very low. His spot serving is definitely the part of his game which is behind technically more than anything. But what we'll see is that it didn't matter in this match. What mattered is that he was making a high percentage of first serves. And he was able to do that by serving big, good amount of speed, but high margin to the deuce side. On the ad side, it was a very, very different strategy. Almost all the traffic was directed to the Casper Ruud backhand. It was out wide all the time. And remember, Ruud standing back on this side. So different return position and different service strategy. A lot more balls closer to the sideline as he was hitting the kick serve out wide, which he was able to place a lot better. He has better control over that serve, and he was focused a lot more on placement and hit those out wide spots. If you look at the yellow dots and the green dots, which are aces, those are all the points that he won on serve. The red dots are the point that he lost. When he got the ball close to the sideline, he didn't lose any points. He won every single good wide serve that Alcaraz hit on the ad side. He won the point. And that's not an exaggeration. Well, let's take a look at why. Let's go back to the deuce side now first. And remember, he's serving big to big targets. And here we have a big point at 6-5 in the opening set. Deuce. Alcaraz trying to serve out the opening set. And here's a first serve into pretty much the middle of the box onto Ruud's forehand side. And now we have the block return by Ruud. And Carlos has amazing racket head speed, great acceleration, and he's tremendous at attacking these low-pace balls and creating offense off of them. Carlos is going to rip this forehand inside out, come to net, and finish off the volley really, really easily. This, to me, was the problem in the match for Ruud, at least on the deuce side, is that against a player like Alcaraz, blocking the serve is not good enough. Now, that can be somewhat harsh against some servers. If you were looking at someone like, let's give another guy who had a great run in Miami, Hubert Hurkacz. If you're playing Hubert Hurkacz in your Casper Ruud, I'm going to say, yes, absolutely, block those returns. You want to get as many in play as possible against Hurkacz, who's a lot less comfortable hitting that first ball, generating his own pace, and attacking off the ground. Much less comfortable. Not to mention, his serve is very difficult to return. He hits great spots, so if you try to drive the return, it's going to be really difficult anyway. But what do we have here? What do we have here at this deuce point? We have a bad serve by Alcaraz. Not a good serve. Terrible spot. Awful location. Right to Ruud's forehand. It's a bad serve. It's a worse return. It's a return that isn't going to get it done. And this is what we saw a lot of from Ruud, and I said it in the preview. If you are blocking your return against Alcaraz, you're not taking advantage of Carlos's weakness. you're not taking advantage of the fact that he misses a lot of spots. You need to be, if you're going to beat Carlos, in my opinion, you need to be threatening enough on return that if Carlos hits a serve that goes right into your strike zone on the forehand side, that you're going to crush that return and you're going to put him in some trouble. If he was playing, I don't know. I don't want to compare Ruud. The point is, an elite returner needs to do more with this return. Ruud blocking the return on the deuce side, the block return is not going to put you in good position against Alcaraz, and you have to come up with a little bit more against Carlos as a server, if that makes sense. Now let's go to the ad side. And remember, you have Ruud now, for the most part, standing back, especially in the first part of this match. So now let's go to match point. And here we have Ruud standing back, and Alcaraz is going to hit the kick wide, and he's going to come in behind it. Ruud's in big trouble here. Carlos finishes this volley. He's got so much court to work with because Ruud's court position is obviously he's allowing himself to be pulled off the court and way behind the baseline with Alcaraz's kick serve, which is his best serve. Ad side, kick wide. That's Alcaraz's best serve, no doubt about it. But also Ruud's backhand, lots of topspin, not great at flattening it out. And his backhand is not good enough to really make Alcaraz uncomfortable on this first volley. If this were, let me throw out some of the players who stand back on return. If this were Dominic Thiem, if this were Daniil Medvedev, if this were Rafael Nadal, they would be much more likely to really crush this return, and with Alcaraz coming in behind his kick serve, either pass him or make him hit a really difficult volley. Ruud's backhand is not at that level. And as a result, his positioning on return here and his backhand and what he's able to do with it, it's putting him in a really tough position where he's not able to really have success from this return position on his backhand with Alcaraz coming in. So Alcaraz, when it comes to serve volley, Alcaraz serve and volleyed 11 times, every single time on the ad side. That's 1 in every 3 points on the ad side. Carlos was coming in. And that doesn't count the serves that he missed. Only the serves that he made. 1 in every 3 points on the ad side, he's coming in. He did it serving for the match. He did it on both points. So I could have shown you the love 15 point in this game as well, where Ruud missed this backhand return, floated it long. It was big trouble for him. So what the return that he needed to find was this one right here. Here's break point for Casper Ruud at 3-love with Alcaraz serving, and Ruud stands in. He's able to, and this was a first serve, I believe. He stands in, and Ruud rips this backhand and puts Alcaraz a little bit off balance on his back foot. Alcaraz goes inside in, and now Ruud's able to hit this big counter forehand cross court to gain control of the rally, and he ends up breaking serve. For Ruud, you have to, against Carlos, you have to find a way to stand in and drive. You can stand back and drive, but that bachand's going to be a problem if you stand back. So really, he needs to find a way to stand in and try to drive. And that's how good Carlos is, because that's easier said than done. And again, against a lot of players, the block return, you can have success with that. But against Carlos, it was trouble here. And Alcaraz was money. He was really, really money. He made just 2 unforced errors on serve in the 0-4 rally length. So he really didn't give anything away in this respect. And he absolutely dominated with this perfect serving strategy. Really smart stuff. By the way, also 38% first serves on return from Ruud. That is too high. That's not really good. We saw Hurkacz, who is who's an average returner, maybe slightly above average returner, in relation to, I don't know, ATP's top 50. 15% first serves unreturned from Alcaraz against Hurkacz. So Hurkacz did a far better job than Ruud of getting those returns back in play. The Ruud return, it's just an issue. It was an issue against Kyrgios at Indian Wells. But other than that, as I'll talk about a little bit later, there's a lot to love about Ruud's hardcourt game. So again, Alcaraz, 35 points won, 6 points lost in short rallies on his serve because the serve and volley on the ad side with the kick serve out wide, or if he stayed back, just getting on top of the point, taking it early on the rise, especially with the forehand inside in and attacking the open court. And on the deuce side, attacking that first ball off of the Ruud block return with how good Alcaraz is at generating his own pace. That was the difference in the match. Now, what Ruud also did, and he got off to an early lead in this match, was he was able to redline on the forehand early on. And that was the only way that I think Casper was going to win the match, is if he just had a spectacular day on the forehand. If that shot really took over the match, and it actually did early on. It did. It took over the match. It was the biggest shot on the court, the best shot on the court, and it did put Carlos really on his heels for a while there. Ruud was averaging 91 miles per hour on his forehand and really rarely, if ever, missing through the first 5 games of the match, where he got up a break and he led, I want to say, was it 3-1 or 4-1? One of those. I think it was just 3-1, actually, before Alcaraz got back into the match, got that break back. What we saw there was actually Ruud not playing fully within himself. And I don't blame him. I have that much respect for Alcaraz and how good he is. But can we take a moment to understand that? 91 mile per hour average on the forehand through the first 5 games of this match. That is a player pressing. That's a player pressing. That is a player who is concerned about his opponent. Because the fastest, just for reference, the fastest forehands in the world average 84 miles per hour. That's what like your Berrettini and Basilashvili are going to do. Then you have Alcaraz Alcaraz or a Fritz, usually averaging around 80, 81 miles per hour. So that's kind of the range. Ruud averaging 91 miles per hour through the first 5 games. That wasn't sustainable. What was going to happen was there were going to be errors. And there were. So Ruud hit 4 forehand winners. And I don't know how many forced errors, but I'm sure even more forced errors before he hit that first forehand unforced error. It's an amazing start on the Ruud forehand. Incredible. But he proceeded to miss 2 forehands in the game that gave the break back to Alcaraz. Missed a lot of first serves in that game as well. Then he missed 3 forehands in the 5-all game that gave Alcaraz the break. He ends up serving for the set there. So Ruud finished with 8 winners on his forehand to 9 unforced errors. Remember, he started 4-0, ended 8-9. Now, if you count finishes, which I think is the fairest way to do it, he ended with 18 finishes to 9 unforced errors, which is pretty good overall. But not as good when you consider how well he started on the forehand. The fact is, Ruud tried to redline on that forehand, and it wasn't sustainable. The misses ended up creeping into his game, which was inevitable. But it is amazing that Alcaraz puts enough pressure on a player as accomplished as Casper Ruud and as good as Casper Ruud that he's really forcing him to go for too much, forcing him to go for more. And another area where that was very evident was Casper going to net. Ruud, I felt like, was forcing it a lot in this match, and he won just 13 of 22 net points. And I don't really feel like Alcaraz's passing shots were always on point. I actually thought that he missed a couple of very makeable backhand passing shots in this match. Still, Ruud was just 13 of 22, which is not a great percentage. And again, you just got the sense that that's not really the Casper that we have come to know. That's a Casper that feels a little bit anxious out there, that feels like he needs to play a little bit better than normal, that feels like, well, maybe he doesn't have that decided baseline edge and that he needs to look to be a little bit more aggressive than normal. Because I can't recall ever seeing Casper going to net 22 times in 2 sets, especially when it's not really even working. It'd be one thing if it were, and then it's identifying something that maybe you're having success with, or you feel really like you're feeling your volleys very well on a specific day, but that really wasn't it. It was mostly just Casper, I think, just upping the aggression and not really wanting to stand back and trade with Carlos Alcaraz. And Casper Ruud is very much a baseliner, but I think he felt uneven. I think he felt that every time he got an attacking forehand, he had to basically finish the point with it. If he didn't finish the point with the forehand, then he was going to come forward behind it to try to finish the point. And there was a certain amount of desperation and anxiousness because I don't think that he felt all that comfortable in rally, which is amazing. There's an intimidation, there's an aura right now that Alcaraz, I think, surely has because of, again, it's nothing that he's accomplished, really. Not to take anything away from what he's accomplished, but it's really what people are seeing, which goes back to what I said at the top. I'm still not sure that forcing your way to net is a very good strategy against Alcaraz. I've talked about this briefly. I don't know for anyone who's, I forget when I talked about it, but for anyone who watches all my videos, they've probably heard me say this once before, but I don't know, going to net against Alcaraz, I'm not sure about that because his defense is very aggressive in nature. He defends very aggressively. So by coming to net, you're giving him, obviously, the green light to try to counterattack and to use his speed and his incredible passing shots to flip the point around. And I just think Alcaraz likes that. And to me, maybe it's better to make him defend error-free and just stay on the baseline where, you know, you're less vulnerable to being counterattacked. Look, we're still learning about what you should do against Carlos Alcaraz. And let's face it, a lot of the best players, there's no kind of clear, like, you should come to net or you shouldn't come to net. It's usually, it doesn't work like that at all. But just in general, and I know that Nadal did it in the 3rd set because he also felt that anxiousness that he wasn't getting the better of play from the baseline. And he was able to make a ton of really difficult volleys over and over and over again in that 3rd set. Spectacular net play by Nadal in the 3rd set to beat Carlos. I get that. But I just don't know that you're finding any sort of advantage by prematurely venturing forward against Alcaraz, because to me, his speed is just a nightmare to try to finish against. And his defense is not always very disciplined. So my thought process is attack off the ground and stay back and hope he misses, trying to go for a little bit too much from defensive positions. That's my thought process. It could be wrong, but 13 for 22 at net for Ruud, trying to redline his forehand. There were a lot of misses. This was, before I finish, I do want to shout out Alcaraz's mentality. A lot of stuff wasn't working for Carlos. I don't think it was his best match. His drop shot was the worst I've ever seen it. He won just 3 of 10 points on the drop shot. It was 51 of 59 for the tournament coming into the match. And his volleying was much worse than usual. He missed a couple of backhand volleys, especially, that he should not miss. And it's the 2nd match in a row where he's had to scrap and claw a little bit. He couldn't return Hurkacz's serve at all. So I just want to say he has, over the last two matches in Miami certainly impressed me with his mental fortitude when it comes to keeping a positive attitude through adversity. This hasn't been a player who has been redlining through the tournament to me. It doesn't look like that to me. It just looks like legitimately Alcaraz has had his challenges, has worked through them, and won 2 matches over the weekend at a Masters 1000 event in Miami. So just want to shout out the positive attitude and the spirit, the competitor's spirit that Alcaraz has shown. Ending on some Casper Ruud thoughts. His serve +1 is now deadly enough to have major success on all surfaces. It's really, really deadly and damaging. The serves averaged 126 and 108 in this match. And that's where the gains have mostly been. They've mostly been the gains for Casper Ruud. I think he went from 27 in the world to 10 in the world last year. The gains have been serve related mostly. Also physical. He's gotten big and strong, I think, over the last couple of years. But the gains have mostly been serve related. That is big. 126 on the first, 108 on the second. That is no joke. We know about his forehand. It's one of the biggest in the world. It is fantastic. When you are combining those two things, serve and forehand, you're going to have you're going to be a top 10 player pretty much right there. Now you add mobility. Ruud moves well. He's fast around the court. He's a great athlete. He can get to a point where I don't think he'll ever serve as well as Matteo Berrettini, but he can get to a point that probably approaches that somewhat. I think right now his serve +1 it's probably as good as Tsitsipas's, close to as good as Tsitsipas's. And that's probably the best comparison, where you have serve +1 and mobility, which is, it's going to get you very, very far. 2 places I want to see him improve. And we're going to move to clay, and he still needs that big run at a major, and I still think he gets nervous sometimes, although this was a good tournament for him when it comes to nerves. Handled the semifinal really, really well. It was great to see. Just needs to improve the return and maybe learn to flatten out that backhand a little bit, because sometimes that can be exposed, that he doesn't protect his backhand as well as he needs to. But it's mostly the return on hardcourt. And honestly, it might hurt him on clay too. Let's keep an eye out for that, because to me, what Alcaraz did with the serve and volley, everyone should be doing that to Ruud. They should be kick serve out wide and come in behind it, even on clay. Everybody should be doing that. So that's where I think the focus needs to be. The more I think about it, the more he reminds me of Tsitsipas, with his weaknesses and what he needs to get better and what he does really, really well. And I think if there's resistance to that comparison, or if that comparison doesn't come to mind really quickly and easily, it might be because of the two-hander versus the one-hander, but really they are so similar. Obviously there are plenty of differences that I can think of. I won't go through them, but the return is that next step, because he used to be a player who was not as proactive and offensive and didn't have the serve and the firepower to really be great on hardcourt. That is no longer the case, is I guess the main point I want to make. He now has the serve and the forehand to play really brutalizing offensive tennis on quicker surfaces and have a ton of success. If he figures out the return, then he's going to go very, very far. He's by no means going to be a clay courter. He's going to be an all courter. That's the missing piece right now. That is all I got. This week is Charleston. The next episode of Monday Match Analysis will be a Monte Carlo preview. Maybe if news breaks before then, I will talk to you then. If not, I will see you then. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.